the steering wheel and he bangs up the car. I'm asking the question, who will you blame? Will you blame the car or the driver? But naturally the driver. If you want to know how good the car is, you look at the specification. What is the pickup? What is the average? What is the ratio? What are the safety measures? How many airbags does it have? Does it have anti-braking locking system? All these, and then you will judge based on the specifications how good the car is. If you really want to test drive the car, you put behind the steering wheel a driver who is an expert. Similarly, if you want to judge Islam, you have to judge Islam based on the authentic sources. That is the glorious Quran and the Sahih Hadith of the Prophet Muhammad. And if you really want to test drive the car, as I mentioned, you have to put behind the car, put behind the steering wheel, an expert driver. The best exemplary Muslim is the last and final messenger, Prophet Muhammad. So if you want to know how good Islam is, you have to read the seerah and understand the life of the last and final messenger, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So one of the major strategies used by the media is to pick up black sheep of the Muslim community and portray as though they're exemplary Muslims. The second strategy used is they quote verses of the Quran or the Hadith of the Prophet, they quote out of context. And that's how they present a complete different picture of Islam. And one of the most common verse quoted by the critics of Islam is the verse in the Quran from Surah Tawbah, chapter number 9, verse number 5, which says that wherever you find a kafir, you kill him. So these people project that the Quran says, wherever you find a kafir, that's a non-Muslim, the Quran prescribes that you should kill him. And when you open the Quran, Surah Tawbah, chapter number 9, verse number 5, and if you read, this verse does exist. The Quran does say that wherever you find a kafir, you kill him. But this verse is quoted out of context. To know the context, we have to start from verse number 1 of Surah Tawbah, chapter number 9. And here we come to know that there is a peace treaty between the Muslims as well as the mushriks of Makkah. And this peace treaty was unilaterally broken by the mushriks of Makkah. By the time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reaches verse number 5, He is giving them an ultimatum, a warning, that put things straight in 4 months' time, otherwise a declaration of war. And then the verse continues that in the battlefield, Allah is telling the Muslims that where you find an enemy, where you find the kafir, don't get scared, kill them, and wait for them in every stratagem of war. So this verse is revealed in the battlefield. But natural, for example, if there is a war going on between US and Vietnam, and in the battlefield, if the army general, to boost up the morale of the soldiers, he will but naturally say to his soldiers that when you find the enemy, you kill them. He will not say that run away. He will not say get scared. Suppose the president of USA, when a war is going on between US and Vietnam, says to the American soldiers that don't get scared, fight them, kill wherever you find the Vietnamese. It is in context. But today if I quote him out of context, I will make him sound like a butcher. But naturally, to boost up the morale, this verse is revealed in the battlefield. That in the battlefield, when the enemies come to attack you, don't get scared, fight them and kill them. And many a times, these critics, they put a full stop where there's no full stop. Or they jump to verse number 7. And one of the famous critics of Islam in India, his name is Arun Shuri, he writes in his book of World of Fatwas. He quotes this verse, Surah Tawbah chapter 9 verse number 5, and from verse number 5 he jumps to verse number 7. Any intelligent person would realize that verse number 6 has the answer to his disease, has the answer to his problem. Verse number 6 says that if the kafir, if the mushrik, if the non-Muslim seek asylum, escort them to a place of security so that they may hear the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran does not say that if they want peace, let them go. The Quran said if the enemies, if the mushrik, if the kafir seek asylum, if they want peace, don't just let them go, escort them to a place of security so that they may hear the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Today, the most generous army general, maximum may say that let the enemy go. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, escort them to a place of security. And you will read in the Quran, wherever you find in the Quran uses fighting as the last resort to maintain peace. And whenever these words are used, always the next verse, invariably, will be talking about peace. And it says that peace is better than fighting. Invariably, anyway you pick up. Violence. Islam is a religion of terrorism. The third strategy used by the media is they pick up certain verses or certain words of the Quran and they mistranslate it. And today, the most misunderstood word in Islam is the word jihad. Not only is it misunderstood by the non-Muslims, because of the media, it's even misunderstood by the Muslims. And today, most of the people think, whether Muslim or non-Muslim, that any war fought by any Muslim, for any reason, whether it be for power, whether it be for fame, whether it be for money, any war fought by any Muslim is called as jihad. Jihad does not mean any war fought by any Muslim for any reason, whether it be for power or for money or for fame. Jihad comes from the Arabic word jahada, which means to strive, which means to struggle. In the Islamic context, jihad means to strive and struggle against one's own evil inclination. Jihad in Islamic context means to strive and struggle to make the society better. Jihad means to fight against oppression. Jihad also means to fight in the battlefield for the human rights. So jihad basically means to strive and struggle. For example, if a student is striving and struggling to pass the examination, in Arabic we'll say he is doing jihad. Anyone who strives and struggles, in Arabic we say jihad. And in Islamic context, if he's striving in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we say he's doing jihad fi sabilillah, striving in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And many people have a misconception that jihad can only be done by Muslims. In fact, there are verses in the Quran which say that non-Muslims did jihad. Quran says in Surah Luqman, chapter number 31, verse number 14. Allah says, we have enjoined on the human beings to be kind to the parents. In travel upon travel did the mother bore you, and in years twain was the weaning. And the next verse says that, but if your parents, Surah Luqman chapter 31 verse number 15, but if your parents strive and struggle, do jihad, to make you worship someone else besides Allah, of whom you have no knowledge, they do not obey them, but yet live with them with love and compassion. The same message is repeated in Surah Ankabut, chapter number 29, verse number 8. We have enjoined on the human beings to be good to their parents. But if their parents strive and struggle, do jihad, to make them worship somebody else besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they do not obey them, but yet live with them with love and compassion. So here the Quran is talking about non-Muslim parents who are doing jihad, who are striving and struggling to make their children worship somebody else besides Allah. So here Allah is referring to non-Muslim parents who are doing jihad fi sabi shaitan. That means the Quran says that even non-Muslims do jihad. But what we Muslims are supposed to do is jihad fi sabilillah, striving and struggling in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.